Hello, my name is Julie, and today I'm going to be talking through a bunch of 2025 releases that I think look great. I feel like in 2024, I didn't have that many 2024 releases that I knew about ahead of time that I was super excited for. I had the authors that I knew about, there were maybe 10. This year, there are so many authors that I've had good experience with that are coming out with new stuff, and I have a couple books by people I have not read from before, or maybe their debut. I am literally just gonna look at the Goodreads page of the book and tell you what we know about them, why I'm excited. I'm gonna start out with the books that I am most dying to read, all from authors that I've read from before, then a bunch of books that I'm excited for, might not get to immediately. I'm probably gonna read a bunch of them, but not all of them, from authors that I've read from before, and then a bunch of authors that are new to me or debut. So my number one most anticipated release of 2025 is The Strength of the Few by James Islington. We do not have a cover, we do not have a synopsis, but we do have an expected publication date of May 6th, 2025, which is only a couple days before my birthday. So that's great for me. Awesome birthday present. This is the second book to the Hierarchy series, the first book being The Will of the Many, which is my favorite book that I have read this year. It is a high fantasy, lightly inspired by the Roman Empire. Our main character used to be this heir of his kingdom before it was fallen, and now he's at the bottom of society doing some roguish type stuff, and he gets adopted by a beneficiary to try to figure out what happened to the beneficiary's son at this elite academy. I think that this has so many different fantastic fantasy elements. It really reminded me of why fantasy is my favorite genre, and I really rooted for our main character. The ending of the book I was positively obsessed with, and I think the cliffhanger we were left on was so good. Cannot wait to see how the magic is going to be expanded upon in book 2, because we kind of get hints of it in book 1. So, most anticipated release. My second most anticipated release is the only nonfiction on that list, and that is Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green. So I am a big John Green fan, and I have been a nerd fighter, so a follower of him and his brother Hank's videos since I was 12 or 13. So I have been watching John talk about tuberculosis for the last several years. Basically, tuberculosis is the world's most deadly disease, and it has been for the vast majority of human history. COVID passed it for 3 years, and then tuberculosis again became the most deadly disease. More people die of it than malaria, war, and homicide combined. We have cures for tuberculosis, and the only reason tuberculosis is still around is because the places where there are money to fix tuberculosis don't have tuberculosis anymore, and they've cured it. First world countries don't feel like helping out other countries where tuberculosis is still rampant and people are dying of a disease that we have a cure for. I think that this book is going to be really important and going to get more people on the TB fighting side, and I am just so excited for it. I have watched his live streams of going through the first couple chapters, and I'm just so pumped. I have already pre-ordered this. Then we have Catabasis by R.F. Kuang. I have read all of her books. I should give The Poppy War another try because I liked it, but I wasn't emotionally invested in it. And her 2 books since, Babel and Yellowface, have been on my favorite books of the year lists. I really do trust her. This is another fantasy book from her, but it says 2 academic rivals from Cambridge must travel to hell to rescue the soul of their advisor. Getting there was easy, surviving it and each other is another thing entirely. R.F. Kuang writing about going to hell? Sign me up. Also, if it's going to take notes from Greek mythology, I am a Greek myth kid, so super pumped. Then we have First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. So B.K. Borison wrote the Lovelight Farms series. I read the first book last year, and it was my favorite romance of the year. I'm reading the second book later this month. This is going to be out in February, just before Valentine's Day, actually. It's the first book in a new series called Heartstrings. It says a hopeless romantic meets a jaded radio host in this cozy, sleepless in Seattle Seattle-inspired love story. Aiden Valentine, is the host of Baltimore's romance hotline. He's fallen out of love with love, and then a girl whose family is critiquing her for not having a love life ends up meeting him, and they are of course gonna fall in love. Then we've got Sangu Mandana has a second book coming out. This book was originally going to come out in 2024 and it got pushed back. That is A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping that says it's going to come out at the end of April. This is a standalone companion to her first book, The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, which I adored. That is one of my favorite cozy fantasies. I think I gave it like a 4.5. So this is about a witch who has a second chance to get her magical powers and her life back on track. Sarah used to be one of the most powerful witches in Britain. Then she resurrected her great aunt Jasmine from the very recently dead, lost most of her magic, befriended a semi-villainous talking fox, and was exiled from her magical guild. She finds an old spell book that could help her, but the only person who can interpret it is an icy historian. So the first book, I thought we had enough of the coming of age stuff mixed in with the fantasy, fun, witchy vibes and the romance. I really like that balance, so I'm excited for this one. Then we have Promise Me Sunshine by Cara Bastone. 3 romances in a row. I will say, the thing about romance readers is they stay fed because these authors are pumping out a book a year no matter what's going on. Fantasy authors, nice try. Promise Me Sunshine by Cara Bastone. She wrote Ready or Not, which is my favorite romance that I've read this year. This is coming out at the beginning of March. And this is about a woman who is grieving her best friend. Her best friend passed away from cancer. She ends up taking a nanny gig for a single mom, and the child's uncle is always there, and he's being kind of a jerk to her, and the two of them are gonna have a romance. I've gotten along with books with this sort of plotline quite a few times. Next up, we have This Book Will Bury Me by Ashley Winstead. So, I've read 4 of her 5 releases. 3 of them have been thrillers, and 2 of them have been romances, so I have not read one of the romances. Her first 2 thrillers were 5 out of 5 stars. In My Dreams I Hold a Knife is one of my favorite thrillers of all time. The romance I wasn't expecting to like, and then I didn't like it that much. And then Midnight is the Darkest Hour was a huge disappointment for me. I thought it really missed the mark. But this one, after the unexpected death of her father, college student Jane Sharp longs for distraction from her grief. She becomes obsessed with true crime, befriending armchair detectives who teach her how to hunt killers from afar. So when news of the shocking deaths of 3 college girls in Delphine, Idaho takes the world by storm, and the sleuths everywhere race to solve the crimes. But the case turns out to be stranger than anyone expected. Details don't add up, the police are cagey, and there seems to be more media hype and internet theorizing than actual evidence. This is told a year later after it has already happened. The 2 books I've loved from her had a framing narrative like that. Then we have Secret Project number 5 by Brandon Sanderson, which is called Isles of the Emberdark. It says expected May 25, so I have already bought this. It just probably won't come until maybe June. The description is very much Cosmere words, so if you're not caught up on the Cosmere, you're probably not going to know what's going on. I'm not caught up on the Cosmere, and I don't know what's going on in the synopsis. So I'm probably just gonna have this, and I probably won't read it until I'm more caught up. But we have 2 characters that seem to have ties with Roshar, and they are going to be trying to stop these really powerful beings from trying to breed and collect AVR. Then we have The Last Session by Julia Bart, who wrote The Writing Retreat, one of my favorite thrillers of all time. It's thriller bordering on horror, and I love it. This is coming out in April, and it says it's a white-knuckled locked room thriller about a social worker who, after coming face-to-face with her dark past, must infiltrate a mysterious wellness center in the deserts of New Mexico. Okay, this kind of sounds like Rouge by Mona Awad. So our main character is a social worker, and she has a patient who comes out of a catatonic state and tells her all this stuff about this weird place that she went, and our main character is investigating it. Then we have Dream On Ramona Riley by Ashley Herring Blake. This is coming out right after my birthday. Exciting stuff. I have enjoyed every single Ashley Herring Blake that I have read. I read one of her YA contemporaries, and I've read the entire Bright Falls series. Enjoyed all of them. Lowest I gave was a 4. This one sounds out of my wheelhouse, maybe not something that I would pick up if it wasn't an author that I loved, but we're gonna try it anyway. So our main character, Ramona Riley, had dreams of being a costume designer. Her father had a car accident, and she ended up, staying stuck in her hometown. There's a rom-com that's being filmed in her hometown, starring a girl that she has kissed, who is now a superstar and also a wild child. But I don't love famous people in romances, but I have only enjoyed Ashley Herringblake before. Then we have My Friends by Frederick Bachman. We just found out about this like a couple weeks ago. It's coming out in June so far. We know nothing about it. We know it is called My Friends. We know it is by Frederick Bachman. That's it. I have read Beartown and I have read A Man Called Uva, and I am reading Us Against You later this month. Then we have The Enchanted Greenhouse by Sarah Beth Durst. This is a standalone sequel to The Spell Shop, which I read and adored this year. Our main character is a character who was mentioned but never seen in the first book, and she broke the law by casting magic and creating a cute little talking spider plant, and she was turned into a statue as punishment. And she has just, after being a statue for forever, she wakes up on this island that is like wintry but has a bunch of magical greenhouses, and she's gonna try to figure out what happened. She learns that the magic that is sustaining them is failing, causing death of everything within them, and she knows she must help, even though that means breaking the law again. Look, this sounds remarkably similar to book one. I loved book one. I'm worried that this is just a reskin of book one. However, I'm still planning on reading it because it was a cozy, fun, kick your feet time. And the last of my top tier books I'm super duper excited for, Hot Wax by ML Rio. I think we just found out about this. So ML Rio wrote If We Were Villains, one of my favorite books of all time, and she released Graveyard Shift a couple months ago. I enjoyed it even if nobody else did. It says it's coming out in September. It says a nostalgic love letter to the 90s rock and roll scene. Hot Wax follows a band of rocker misfits, rivals, and trailblazers on the tour that could have catapulted them to superstardom if it hadn't all come crashing down. I tend to like books about music. I also think that she works so well with ensemble pieces that seeing her do almost like a Daisy Jones in the 60s type thing could be a good idea. Fixing the lighting. We're fixing the lighting. Then we have my tier 2 books that I have my eye on from authors that I've read from before. First up, we've got A Curse Carved in Bone. This is the conclusion to the Saga of the Unfated duology, the first book being Fate Inked in Blood. I love Danielle L. Jensen. I am such a big fan of the Bridge Kingdom, but Fate Inked in Blood, I gave it like a 3.5. I thought it was okay. It is Norse-inspired high fantasy. Our main character secretly has the power to be a shield maiden, and she gets married off to this old king, and she is supposed to like bring him glory. Whoever has her as their shield maiden is supposed to rule all the kingdoms. And she is in love with the old king's son. I am planning on finishing this to like complete the series and everything. I did ask for an arc, and they're not doing arcs, so I'm upset, but we'll see. I'll try to get my hands on it. Then we've got The Possession of Alba Diaz by Isabel Cañas coming in August. I have read The Hacienda. I have not read her second book, but I really was surprised by how much I love The Hacienda because like the subject matter of like a haunted house is something I really don't care about, but the just combination of so many genres really worked for me. So this says a demonic presence awakens deep in a Mexican silver mine, and the young woman it seizes must turn to the one man she doesn't trust. So it's in 1765, there's a plague going around, and she gets possessed, and a man who came from the New World to escape his family's greed and is the cousin of Alba's betrothed is supposed to be the one to help her. We'll see. I am obsessed with this cover. Next up, we have The Teeth of Dawn by Marina Lostetter. This is the third book in the 5 Penalties series. The first book made my top 10 books of the year. I thought it was such an original blend of fantasy and horror. In this world, you can imbue a mask with somebody's greatest talent after they're dead, and a serial killer's mask has been stolen. So fascinating. Book 2, I didn't love as much. I didn't think the unique plot of that book I was as invested in. I am planning on finishing out this trilogy at least, but I am less excited for it than I was for book 2. I do think this is a remarkably underrated series given how much I loved the first book. Then we have Immortal by Sue Lynn Tun. This is going to be coming out at the beginning of January. So this is a standalone romantic fantasy. I have read Daughter of the Moon Goddess by her. The first book, Daughter of the Moon Goddess, 5 brilliant stars. The second book was the most disappointing sequel I think I've ever read in my life. We'll see if Su Lin Tun really is an author for me with this book. Our main character is the heir to the throne. She gets poisoned and her grandmother saves her, but an immortal goddess is mad that her grandma did that, kills the grandma, and our main character is put on the throne. Her romantic interest is the god of war. Oh, okay. We'll see. Arkady Martine, who is the author of A Memory Called Empire, has a novella coming out. I'm not that much of a novella person. I didn't know it was a novella until right now. But it is called Rose/House, maybe just Rose House. Bassett's houses were haunted to begin with. A house embedded with artificial intelligence is a common thing. A house that is an artificial intelligence infused in every load-bearing beam and fine marble tile with a thinking creature that is not human, that is something else altogether. But now the creator of these houses have been dead a year, and there's a specific house that is locked up, and somebody else is going to go in there, and it turns out there's a dead person in there. Sci-fi horror is something that can really work for me. This cover does look like a novella. It does not look like a novel. Speaking of sci-fi thriller horror, we have a new S.A. Barnes out. I have read and loved Dead Silence, have yet to read her second book. It says, blends the dystopian dread of Severance with the catastrophic approach to AI from Megan. Haley is on the run from an interplanetary political scandal that has put a huge target on her back. She finds a place that seems great to lay low, with a bunch of cryogenically frozen bodies. There's something there that shouldn't be. It sounds like kind of what her other 2 books are kind of set up to be, but I don't know. Dead Silence worked so well for me. Next up, we've got Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. It says, Santo Domingo, 1532, London, 1837, Boston, 2019. 3 young women, their bodies planted in the same soil, their stories tangling like roots. One grows high, and one grows deep, and one grows wild, and all of them grow teeth. I don't know. The last 2 V.E. Schwab releases I have not read, but before that, like, all of her stuff I had really enjoyed, and I don't know if I'm done with my V.E. Schwab phase or not. This sounds great. That specific synopsis would have intrigued me regardless of the author. Then we've got What Happens in Amsterdam by Rachel Lynn Solomon. This is coming out in May, again right before my birthday. Our main character has gotten dumped and fired, and she gets a new job that has her move from Los Angeles to Amsterdam. But at the end of a disastrous first week, the big move is looking like an even bigger mistake, especially when she crashes her bike into her family's handsome Dutch exchange student from 10 years ago. Her first love until he inexplicably ghosted her. So this is a second chance romance. I'm interested. I have read all 3 of Rachel Lynn Solomon's adult romances. One of them is one of my favorites. One of them I thought was really solid, and the other one I did not like at all. So we'll see. Then we have The Unworthy by Agustina Basterica. I don't know where the emphasis goes on her name. This is the author of Tender as the Flesh. From her cell in a mysterious convent, a woman writes the story of her life in whatever she can find. A lower member of the Sacred Sisterhood, deemed an unworthy, she dreams of ascending the ranks of the enlightened at the center of the convent. Outside, the world is plagued by catastrophe. When a stranger makes their way past the convent walls, things are changing. So this is like cult-like. I am into cult-like horror books, and I pretty much implicitly trust this author after Tender as the Flesh, which I think is one of like the most successful books I've read in a long time. There is yet another Eric LaRocca novella coming out called At Dark I Become Lonesome. I read the collection that came with Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke. I really enjoyed Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke. I didn't really care for the other stories that were attached to it. The main character is in grief over the loss of his wife, and then finds online a person who could be potential candidate for his next ritual. I don't know what's going on. It could be great. We've got Famous Last Words by Gillian McAllister. I have read Wrong Place, Wrong Time, haven't yet read her other thing. It's June 21st, the longest day of the year, and the life of new mother Camilla is about to change forever. After months of maternity leave, she will drop her infant daughter off at daycare for the first time and return to her job as a literary agent. But when she wakes, her husband Luke isn't there, and in his place is a cryptic note. Then it starts. Breaking news. A hostage situation is developing in London. The police tell her Luke is involved, but he isn't the hostage. Her husband, doting father, eternal optimist, is the gunman. That was a plot twist. I did not remember that that was the synopsis. Super excited. I really loved Wrong Place, Wrong Time. Next up, Charmaine Wilkerson has a new book out that is the author of Black Cake. Liked that this year. This says it is a historical fiction. A 10-year-old witnessed her brother shot, and the crime was never solved, and they were like the only well-to-do Black family in their area, and I'm assuming we're solving the crime. That sounds pretty good. I really ended up getting pretty emotional at the end of Black Cake, so I'm excited to see what else we've got. Libba Bray has a new historical fiction out. It is saying that it is young adult. Been reading the Diviner series lately and been really liking it. This is set in 1940s Germany, 1980s West Germany, and 2020 New York City during the COVID lockdown. It was said that if you write to the bridegroom's oak, the love of your life will answer back. Now the tree is giving up its secrets at last. So 3 different teenagers throughout time who are all in like precarious situations. I love a book with a setup of being set in multiple places. Then we have Neil Shusterman is coming out with a thriller this year. It's called All Better Now. It is being published in February, about a world where happiness becomes contagious and the teens caught in the conspiracy by the powers that be to bring back discontent. I've read all of the Scythe series. I've also read Challenger Deep. I love when people take real life stuff and make it a metaphor, and that's what the fiction is. So this being like people shouldn't be forced to be happy, that sounds like something I really like. Then we have S.T. Gibson does have a book coming out next year, and it is the sequel to Evocation. I have not read Evocation yet. I'm reading it this month. So if I end up loving it, I will continue on in the series. The second book is called Ascension, and it is coming out in July. So the first book is about a guy who has like sold his soul to the devil and is trying to get out of it. And the only way he knows how to do that is if he like gets his ex's help, but his ex is married. And like it's then the 3 of them figuring stuff out. I don't love the cover of this as much as book 1. I think it's got some dead air in the middle. Then we have You Killed Me First by John Mars. This is coming out in March. I read The One by John Mars, one of my favorite thrillers of all time. It's a sci-fi thriller. I have not read any of his stuff since, so maybe this is the time to pick it up again. It's the 5th of November. A woman wakens in a nightmare. She's bound and gagged, and she lies trapped in the heart of a towering bonfire. We're rewinding 11 months, and we are going to see her lead up to that moment. I love a countdown thriller. Exciting. T. Kingfisher technically has 2 books coming out in 2025. Technically, because one of them is a re-release of a book she indie published. That is Sword Heart, which was out in 2018. It's now getting a traditional publishing. Our main character is a housekeeper who suddenly inherited her great uncle's estate and his relatives. Sarkis is an immortal swordsman trapped within the prison of a sword. So our main character, I'm assuming, is falling in love with a person who is trapped in a sword. Cool. And her brand new release in 2025, which is coming out in August, is called Hemlock and Silver, and it is a reimagining of Snow White, which I just read A Sorceress Comes to Call, which is a reimagining of the Goose Girl, and I loved how that just kind of picked and chose whatever it wanted from the story and made a whole new thing. So I think that this is interesting to me. So our main character, Anya, is a healer, and she is hired to fix the mysterious illness afflicting the king's daughter. She finds herself against the clock, aided by a taciturn bodyguard, a narcissistic cat, and a late Renaissance understanding of the scientific method. She must navigate the mysteries of the mirror before the dark queen that dwells within rises to threaten them all. Then we've got Automatic Noodle by Annalee Newitz. I have read all 3 of Annalee Newitz's fiction, and I read 1 of their nonfiction. So of the 3 fiction books, I think I gave them a 5, a 4, and a 3. This is a novella, so it's coming out in August. This is like a cozy near future sci-fi about a crew of abandoned food service bots opening their very own restaurant. This cover looks so cute. I love it. I feel like this is going to be a Psalm for the Wild Build People's book of the year. And the last book in this tier is We Do Not Part by Hong Kong. So our main character is called that someone she knows has been hurt and is going to be in the hospital, and she ends up getting trapped in a snowstorm. It says, blurring the boundaries between dream and reality, it illuminates a forgotten chapter in Korean history buried for decades. That sounds fantastic. I really, really enjoyed The Vegetarian. She just won the Nobel Prize for Literature. So this originally came out in Korean in 2021, probably helped her win the award. So exciting. I'm gonna change the lighting yet again. Okay, much better. Then I have 10 books here that are by authors that I have not read from before. Some of them are debut, some of them are just authors I haven't picked up from that have interesting enough 2025 releases and also didn't have bad reviews. There were so many books that looked interesting to me and then were already getting bad reviews. So this is my limited list of 10 books. Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor. I have heard so many great things about this author and I've just never gotten around to reading any of her stuff. This is coming out in mid-January. Life has thrown Zilu some curveballs over the years, but when she suddenly dropped from her university job and her latest novel is rejected, all in the middle of her sister's wedding, her life is upended. Disabled, unemployed, and from a nosy, high-achieving, judgmental family, she's not sure what comes next. In her hotel room that night, she takes the risk that will define her life. She decides to write a book very unlike her others, a science fiction drama about androids and AI after the extinction of humanity, and everything changes. I love a book about an author. I love when writers write about writing. I think it's so fascinating, and this author has been one who I have ignored and need to fix that. Then we have Mask of the Deer Woman, which is a thriller that is coming out in January by an Indigenous author. And this is about murdered and missing Indigenous women and children. To find a missing young woman, the new tribal marshal must also find herself. An ex-Chicago detective's daughter was murdered, and she has no choice but to go back to her roots. And now a different girl is missing, and the detective is going to be looking into that. What she doesn't know is whether Deer Woman is here to guide her or seek vengeance for their lost daughters that Star can never bring home. This sounds fantastic. This book doesn't sound like anything that I would pick up normally, but something about it, maybe the cover, maybe it being about sisters, sounded like I might be interested in it. This is called Maya and Natasha by Elise Durham. This is being released in February. It's a historical fiction set during the Cold War in the Soviet Union, and Maya and Natasha are twin sisters who are in the ballet together. Their company is going to be touring or going travel, and they can only choose one of them. They have to beat the other person. I really like a complicated sibling dynamic in books, so that's why I'm interested in this. Then we have a horror book that I'm interested in from a debut author that is called Listen to Your Sister, another sister book by Nina Veal. It says, for fans of Jordan Peele's films, Stranger Things, and The Other Black Girl, I am a fan of all three of those things, so this had to go on my list. 25-year-old Calla Williams is struggling since becoming the guardian to her brother Jamie. Her other brother was supposed to help her, but it's not working. And all through it all, the nightmare never stops haunting Calla, recurring images of her brothers dying that she is powerless to stop. When Jamie's actions at a protest spiral out of control, the siblings must go on the run. They take refuge in a remote cabin that looks like it belongs on a slasher movie poster rather than Airbnb. I think that sounds awesome. Then we've got Something in the Walls by Daisy Pierce. Our main character is a child psychologist. She is about to get married. She's also struggling from the death of her brother years ago, and she's in a grief support group. And then a journalist goes to this grief support group and propositions her to deal with somebody. There was a young girl named Alice who claims that a witch is haunting her, and she is going to try to figure out what's up with her. Then we've got The Manor of Dreams by Christina Lee that says it's going to be out again right before my birthday. And it says, Mexican Gothic meets everything I never told you, in Christina Lee's haunting novel about the secrets that lie in wait in the crumbling mansion of a former Hollywood starlet, and the intertwined fates of two Chinese-American families trying to inherit it. Vivian Yin is dead, the first Chinese actress to win an Oscar. The trailblazing ingenue rose to fame in the 80s, only to disappear from the spotlight at the height of her career and live out the rest of her life as a recluse. And her family has gathered to read the will. It says it's told in dual timelines, spanning spanning 3 generations, brimming with romance, betrayal, ambition, and sacrifice. It's as a thrilling family gothic that examines the true cost of the American dream and what happens when the roots we set down in this country turn to rot. I mean, it sounds like 5 stars is what it sounds like to me. Then we have The Wind Weaver by Julie Johnson. I'm not gonna lie, do I have this on my list because her name is Julie? A little bit. This says it's going to be out in April. It is a romantasy, but this cover looks so pretty, so we're gonna wait to hear things about it. A spellbinding romantasy where a young woman reignites the embers of an ancient prophecy, unleashing a storm that could save her realm or doom them all. Oh, our main character's a halfling? Do you mean a halfling like a hobbit, or do you mean a halfling like half-fae? Fear of magic plagues war-torn Anwin. Halflings like Rhea Fleetwood are killed on sight, but her execution interrupted by an unexpected savior, one far more terrifying than her would-be killers, the mysterious and mercenary Commander Scythe. In the clutches of this new enemy, Rhea finds herself fighting for her life in the barren reaches of the Northlands. She's no ordinary halfling. A strange birthmark on her chest and the wind she instinctively calls forth means she is a remnant, one of 4 souls scattered across the land, fated to restore the balance of everything or die trying. I don't know. I'm gonna wait for reviews on this, but like, this is just the most stunning cover I've seen in a long time, and I want to support a Julie. Then we've got a book that was on a lot of my friends' like most anticipated books of the year. That is Out of the Woods by Hannah Bonham Young. This is the same author who wrote Out on a Limb. This is about high school sweethearts who have always been a sure thing, always been there for each other. And Sarah doesn't really know who she is without Caleb. And then she tries to do a project on her own. It fails and he has to save the day. And now this has caused a huge rift between them. They end up joining a hiking trip for couples that are supposed to guide them through rough patches. I love a second chance romance. Like, friends to lovers, second chance romances are like my buzzwords in romance. So, and I think the outdoorsy hiking setting will be interesting. Then we got one that everybody has been talking about, and that is We Could Be Rats by Emily R. Austin. It's going to come out at the end of January. And it says a moving story about 2 very different sisters and a love letter to childhood, growing up, and the power of imagination. One sister is kind of well adjusted and one of them is not, and there is a lot of things that they are haunted by with their past and like with their parents, and the 2 of them are going to be reconnecting. I love stories about sisters. I love my sister. I do not have trauma about my sister. We're great. Writing a fantastic sibling dynamic is a recipe for me to love your book. And the last book I'm going to talk about in this video is They Bloom at Night by Trang Tan Tran. This author, they wrote She Is a Haunting, which I was really excited for and haven't gotten around to it. A red algae bloom has taken over Mercy, Louisiana. Ever since a devastating hurricane, mutated wildlife lurks in the water that rises by day. And our main character and her mom are stuck navigating the town. Her mom believes that her family has been reincarnated as animals, and our main character believes that she has herself been infected with this algae. That sounds awesome. But yeah, that was over 40 books that I am at least a little bit interested in reading. I would love to know if you have any books that you're excited about in 2025 that I should put on my radar, because I would love to hear about them. I need to make my TBR way too big. So thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see more videos from me, you can hit that subscribe button, and if you want to find me anywhere on the internet, you can find me at the link in the description. And as always, I will see you in the next one.